Woodworker Anonymous here at the workbench, and sanding blocks, sanding pads. Man, do these things suck. And they're not cheap. Well, this one's probably cheap. This one sucks more than any of them. I don't know. This one does too. So what's wrong with this? Okay, well, number one, sandpaper you got to put on here. It's got to come from those full sheets of sandpaper. I mean, you could buy the quarter sheets already cut, but you're going to pay 4 times as much for it. Don't do that. So you got full sheets of sandpaper. You got to cut them down to fit every time you want to put a new piece on here. And then, let's face it, getting this piece of paper onto this style block, pulling back this stiff rubber lip, trying not to stab yourself with those nails sticking through there while you try to force the paper over top of it, and then line it up so it goes perfectly straight down the face. Obviously I didn't do a very good job. Pull the other side back, same thing, avoid the big spikes, get the paper in there tight. This is not fun. It's annoying, and try to avoid it most of the time because of that. What sucks about these things? Well, these things wear out real quick. They're kind of cool because they're foam, so they kind of conform to whatever profile you're sanding. But whatever abrasive stuff they put on here wears out almost immediately. Then the rubber starts to tear on the corners. They become worthless pretty quickly, and they're not cheap. And you can, they come in one grit. Some of them have a grit on a different grit on either side. Regardless, they just don't last long. I keep it around because then I'll try to wrap some paper around it and still use it. Sometimes that helps in a pinch, but still, you got all this extra stuff sticking out on the front and the back, and it's a knuckle buster. It's kind of a pain. It's a total pain. So I can't really recommend buying these things because they just wear out too fast. And then a problem with both of these, a big problem, is obviously no dust collection. So you're sanding, the little dust, wood dust that comes off stays underneath, starts to clog up the paper, gets jammed and packed into there. So now the paper is getting clogged up, not sanding evenly, so you got to try to clean the paper constantly. And besides that, it's leaving dust all over the place. It's getting in the air. It's close to where you're breathing. It's just not optimal. In fact, it's pretty downright terrible. There's no excuse for this. Sometimes, you need a small block to do some sanding. You don't want like the big random orbit sander. Maybe, it's a little too aggressive, or you need to get into a tight spot, or, maybe you're not close to an outlet. There's a lot of reasons you're not going to want to use your random orbit sander all the time, and you do need some other type of sanding block. And this is just a bane that I just can't deal with anymore. So the idea is to create a sanding block out of simple cut and glue method that if I want to, I can attach like a small little shop vac to. And also, I don't have to rely on sheet goods and cutting them every time I want to change out a grit. I'd like to be able to just use those 5-inch diameter random orbit sanding discs. Everybody's got those for their sanders. Why do we just have to use them for those? Let's use it on a block as well. So that's what I'm going to do today. Okay, full disclosure here. I started making this prototype, and I didn't really do a good job of videoing all the little steps that I made. And next thing I knew, it got to a point where I was like, well, this is better than just a prototype. I think I'm just going to keep it. So, but I'm just going to kind of show you what I did. Obviously we're using this style sandpaper to make it easier, and so that means that we get our first measurement right off the paper. And if you look at the sandpaper, I'm going to take this dimension. It is from these two holes apart from each other. That's going to be the full width, and I measured that on these 5-inch discs with 8 holes, and that is 2 3/4 inches. The overriding decision for size of this block is 2 3/4 inches wide, so that when you line the holes up and fold them back, you got all 8 holes. And this is as narrow as you can make it and still have all 8 holes providing you with suction. All right, so 2 3/4 inch, and there's no complicated joinery here. There's no dovetails, there's no mortises, there's not even brad nails in this. This is strictly glued up blocks of scrap wood. And so basically I cut a bottom, and this is the 2 3/4 inches wide. It's going to span those holes. Okay, and then I just cut some side pieces. We're going to put those right on top here. Just cut some end caps that are just going to go right here. All right, so this took about 10 minutes at the most. Some CA glue and activator, just glued the box up, took it over to the bandsaw, cut it on that angle, and then took it to the belt sander or my spindle sander, and I just smoothed up all the faces to make sure they're nice and flush, so that the paper will fold nicely around it. But you can see where we got to drill our holes, and again on these 4 on the side, they got to be drilled at an angle so that they pop out along the side here. Otherwise they'll just come straight up here and they won't get into that suction chamber. I'm going to do something a little differently on this one. You can see this one I made. This is my shop vac attachment that I have in the shop vac at the workbench, and so I sized it for that. I actually had to drill 1.5 inch hole. This is 1 3/4. And then I had to use a spindle sander to just kind of ream this out until it kind of fit. And it was a lot of work actually, and pain in the butt getting it just right, but it does work good. But I'm going to change it up here on this one I'm going to build now. I have this attachment right here that reduces the opening, so I can plug that in. And it actually is a much smaller opening, so it'll actually work better in the back of the sanding mouse. So I just going to measure that up here. It's looks like it's just under 1 1/4. So a 1 1/4 inch hole here should be fine, and it'll fit in there nice. So let me find a 1 1/4 inch Forstner bit. We're going to put a hole right through here and see how that works out. 1 1/4 inch hole, and that's a nice little tight fit right there. So all right, that was easier than this one. And that's what happens on the second go around. Let me finish this off. This is the one I'm just whipping up as fast as I can because I didn't video that one. And I'll be honest with you, this is just 10 minutes of just pushing it around that block on here and getting it shaped. Something that's going to be easy to hold, and I really like it. And I'm just trying to bang this out. I mean, I'm not trying to make this, very exact. I had a little bit of a blow through here. I was a little more careful on this one. I didn't have any of that. But to be honest with you, you need a little bit of bleeding air suction anyway, because this creates so much suction and so much downforce. Actually going to have to drill a couple holes up front to allow air to get through there, so it does allow you to move it back and forth. But you can see here it's going to, you'll be able to get your piece of paper on here. It's going to work real well. Maybe a little more sanding, get some of these sharper edges off, but and that's really how simple it is. So this is the finished product on the sanding block or sanding mouse, whatever you want to call it. I drilled some holes in here so that we can get some dust collection on the sanding block using your standard 5-inch discs. It's pretty simple. The idea here is that you'll just make those things fit right over top of those holes, and then we'll fold this up over, and I'm going to install these velcro This actually is not a Velcro, it's called a dual lock. And they're actually just like little nubs, and they work really good on the Velcro on the back of this sandpaper. So So that's it, that's done. You can just use this as simply a sanding block. You don't need to use any vacuum suction if you don't want to. You can just stick these pieces on it, just like that. This is what's so nice about it. Or you want to change grits on your sandpaper. I mean, it's just a matter of lining up the holes and then folding down the lip. And you're good to go. I mean, it couldn't be any easier to change sandpaper. So much easier than changing the sandpaper on these rubber blocks. I hate them. Homemade sanding mouse, shop mouse, sanding block. I don't know what you want to call it. Looks like a mouse to me, so I'll call it my sanding mouse. Listen, get out in the shop, make something great, and I'll catch you next time.